This is Radio Kuwait. The time now is 9 p.m. Kuwait local time. That's 800 hours GMT. This is Radio Kuwait, transmitting on 963 kHz on the medium wave for our listeners in the state of Kuwait and the Arabian Gulf area. Our local listeners can also receive our transmission on 93.3 MHz on the FM band. As for our listeners in Europe and North America, we are transmitting on 1500-540 kHz on the 25-meter band on the short wave.
This is the International English Broadcasting Radio of the State of Kuwait.
We welcome you, month we all adore. We pray for happiness and more. To all the people, open up your door. Peace, love and joy. Let them soar, let them soar.
What we need to know about the Islamic fasting month, Ramadan, with Sheikh Musaad Al-Sana and the director Muhammad Badr Al-Imran in Ramadan Traits.
Dear listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome you in a new episode of our program. And we thank the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who made us able to fast and pray Taraweeh in this glorified month, Ramadan. May Allah the Almighty accept our worship in its days and nights and make us amongst those whose sins be washed away and mistakes be forgiven. Asking Allah the Merciful to salvage our necks from the hellfire by granting us the fruitful bounty of the night of power. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we should realize that Allah made Sawm, that is fasting, obligatory on us as a way for us to worship Him. For the fasting to be acceptable and beneficial, we should observe the following conditions. We mentioned some of them on the previous episode, and we continue on this episode. Read the pamphlets on fasting to learn its rules. For instance, if you ate or drank forgetting that you were fasting, it doesn't break the fast, but you have to stop immediately as soon as you realize what you are doing. Another example. And he doesn't get a chance to perform al-ghusl, that is taking a bath, before the appearance of dawn. Well, that doesn't prevent him from fasting. He just has to perform the ghusl and offer salat and go ahead and observe fast. The next point, be mindful of the fast of Ramadan and get your children used to it when they are able to endure it. Beware of breaking the fast without a valid excuse. Whoever does so must repent from that and make up for that day. And whoever has intercourse with his wife during the daytime of Ramadan, he has to expiate the sin. He must free a slave if he is able to do so. If not, he should fast 2 months continuously, that is 60 days without missing a day. And if he can't do that either, he should feed 60 poor persons 1 meal. Beware, my Muslim brothers, from breaking the fast of Ramadan without excuse, and beware of doing so openly in front of people, because breaking the fast is audacity with Allah, disrespect for Islam, and shamelessness among the people. And you should realize that the one who doesn't fast doesn't really have an Eid, that is festival, because the Eid is the occasion of great happiness for those who completed the fast and hope for their worship to be accepted. Now, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we would like to talk about some of the hadith on the virtues of fasting. أبواب السماء وأغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلة الشياطين. وفي رواية: إذا جاء رمضان فتحت أبواب الجنة، متفق عليه. وفي رواية أخرى: فتحت أبواب الرحمة، أخرجه البخاري ومسلم. The translation of these hadiths, dear brothers and sisters: when Ramadan starts, the doors of heaven are opened, the doors of hell are closed, and the devils are chained up. And in another version: when Ramadan starts, the doors of paradise are opened, and in another version, the doors of mercy are open. These hadiths are agreed upon. In a version reported by At-Tirmidhi, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned: وَيُنَادِي مُنَادِي يَا بَاغِيَ الْخَيْرِ هَلُمَّ وَأَقْبِلْ وَيَا بَاغِيَ الشَّرِّ أَقْصِرْ وَلِلَّهِ عُتَقَاءُ مِنَ النَّارِ وَذَلِكَ فِي كُلِّ لَيْلَةٍ حَتَّى يَنْقَضِي رَمَضَانَ. The translation of this hadith, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned: and a caller calls out, O you who crave the good, come on, and O you who crave evil, abstain. And Allah has certain people whom He frees from the hellfire every night until Ramadan ends. Declared good by Al-Albani in Al-Mishkat. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a divine hadith: every good deed of the son of Adam is multiplied in reward 10 to 700 times, except for fasting. For it is for me, and I will grant the reward for it. He, the fasting person, leaves his passion and his food for my sake. The fasting person has 2 moments of happiness. One moment when he ends his fasting for the day, that is iftar, and the other when he meets his Lord. And the smell which issues from the mouth of the fasting person is more pleasant to Allah than the smell of musk fragrance. This hadith is agreed upon. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I said what I addressed to you, and if it was right, it would have been from Allah alone, and if there was a mistake, it was because of me and Satan, and Allah and His Messenger are free from it. Until I meet with you again next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We welcome you, month we all adore. We pray for happiness and more. To all the people, open up your door. Peace, love and joy. Let them soar, let them soar.
This is for our program today, Ramadan traits. Best regards Sheikh مساعد الصانع and the director محمد بدر العمران.
أهلا رمضان.
I'm wishing on a star to find where you are. I'm wishing on a dream to follow peace, and I wish on all the rainbows that I see, and I wish for all the people. So far away from home, so far away from me. Just think of all the moments that we spent. I just can't let you go from me. We weren't, and I didn't mean to, but I know that in the game of love you need what you sow. I feel it's time we should make up, baby. I feel it's time for us to get back together, make the best of things, oh baby, when we're together. I feel it's time we should make up. I feel it's time for us to make the best thing. Oh, make it happen. We should know the star. Come bring me your softness, comfort me through all this madness. Darling, don't you know with you I'm born again? Come give me your sweetness. Now there's you, there is no weakness. Lying safe within your arms, I'm born again. I was half, not whole, and stuck with none, reaching through this world in need of love. Come show me your kindness. In your arms I know I'll find this. Darling, don't you know with you I'm born again. Lying safe with you I'm born again.
Dear parents, at all times, make sure that children are not in the kitchen without the parents' supervision to avoid any harm. This message was brought to you by the Public Relations and Media Department from the Kuwait Fire Service Directorate.
Ramadan traditions around the world on Radio Kuwait. Written by Chaitali B. Roy, hosted by Maha Hassan, and directed by Salim al-Rashid. Ramadan Kareem, and welcome to Ramadan Around the World on Radio Kuwait. Ramadan is a month of prayers and festivities for Muslims around the world. It is an opportunity for them to clean themselves spiritually and physically and experience the hunger that the poor constantly feel. In Oman, Ramadan does not seem to be different from other Islamic countries. However, it certainly has its own unique tradition. As usual, preparations for the arrival of this holy month actually starts at least 2 weeks in the month of Sha'ban. It starts with people stocking up on household goods supplies. For example, in Oman, people start making traditional flat dry bread and, of course, roasting the coffee, which is called qahwa, doing all the cleaning and clearing and with the rest of the household tasks. They buy new and old clothes and at times new furniture. The announcement of the beginning of Ramadan comes in the evening just before the Isha prayer. In the interiors of Oman, gunshots are heard from those with rifles. They shoot into the air when the crescent moon is sighted at a few selected areas in this country. Before the Isha prayer, neighbors visit and congratulate each other on the arrival of Ramadan. Back in the capital of the Sultanate of Oman, Muscat seems very calm and quiet during daytime. You see less cars on the roads. However, towards Iftar, Muscat bursts into active life with cars rushing past. Mosques here do not organize mora, which is food after prayer, on certain days because each and every household will have loads and loads of food to offer to everyone, and this food celebration will go on every night until the end of this holy month. One tradition that Oman shares with Kuwait is Qara. This occasion takes place after the 15th day of Ramadan. In this, children walk from one house to another at night chanting, Qara, O people, give us some sweets. This is one reason why one notices while shopping in Oman during Ramadan, trolleys are filled up with containers of sweets. This tradition is similar to Kuwait's Girga'an, where children go around singing and collecting sweets. Far away in Dhofar, which is situated in the south of the Sultanate of Oman, along its borders with Yemen and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there is a tradition associated with Ramadan. Dhofar has a great view and nice cool weather during the summer season, and the people of Dhofar definitely enjoy more outdoor activities compared to other waliyats, including Muscat, where it is very hot in the summer. Dhofaris organize iftar or suhoor with family and friends gathering on the Green Mountains towards the last weeks of Ramadan. Most of the time, families and friends even stay for Ramsa, which means night hangout, until suhoor under the moonlit beautiful mountains by bringing along the food, water and other necessities. They also arrange private family iftar for closer family members at the elderly relatives' residence, as well as going for mushahara, which means visiting other relatives. In hypermarkets in Oman, they have big boxes called charity bag drop-off, which is provided to collect donations for the needy. The organizers have a list of particular items such as rice, flour, sugar, coffee, milk, cooking oil, tea, tomato puree and dates, which is attached to this box. All items are brought fresh from the hypermarkets, dropped off in big boxes, and they are always overloaded. Some of traditional foods in Oman that are mostly served on special occasions, like Eid, Ramadan, weddings and funerals. The most famous food or Omani dessert in Ramadan is the famous Omani halwa. The halwa is served on all occasions. Aside from the halwa, there is the Omani coffee qahwa, which is the most served with the halwa. Not because it's a side topic, but because it's a tradition which we inherited from our ancestors. Omani halwa is famous as a symbol of traditional Omani hospitality. Some Omanis make halwa out of fresh and pure honey. The halwa's taste and color might not always taste the same because it depends on the makers and experience in the pureness of the honey. The halwa is served in all occasions, whether there's a happy one, once like weddings, or the sad ones, like funerals. The other main ingredients which go into making of halwa are starch, eggs, sugar, water, ghee, saffron, cardamom, nuts, and rose water from the Jabal al-Akhdar. The ingredients are mixed together in proportions and quantities known only to the skilled halwa maker and cooked in a large cooking pot used especially for halwa for a time duration of not less than 2 hours. The cooking can be done over a gas or electric stove, but the preferred method is over a wood fire made of wood, known for its durability and smoke and odor-free properties. After cooking, the halwa can be preserved for more than 4 months without losing its quality, and without the need for refrigeration or preserving agents. Halwa is usually served in a dish or a large earthenware bowl, which can vary in size and composition according to demand or type of occasion. Aside from the halwa, there is the Omani coffee qahwa, which must be served with the halwa because it's a tradition which they inherited from their ancestors. Apart from halwa, they also eat after the fasting season, which is Ramadan, the Eid comes, and the Eid is celebrated twice a year. One is after Ramadan and the other is during the Hajj season. Shua, which is mostly a lamb meat mixed with special spices depending on taste. The lamb is buried in a flammable hole after covering it with banana tree leaves for a whole day. This is generally prepared towards the end of Ramadan. You can eat it with rice or bread, and the most recommended breads are the Iranian bread tanur or the Pakistani bread rakh. Ramadan Traditions Around the World on Radio Kuwait. Written by Chaitali B. Roy, hosted by Maha Hassan, and directed by Salim al-Rashid.
Oh, my Lord, my darling, I hunger for your touch.
This is Radio Kuwait. The time now is 9:30 p.m. Kuwait local time. Good evening and welcome to this hour's main news bulletin. I'm Ahmed Al-Tamimi. We begin with the headlines where His Highness the Emir returns home after leading Kuwait's delegation to the extraordinary summit meeting of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation OIC in Istanbul, Turkey. His Highness the Emir affirms the continuous Kuwaiti diplomatic efforts until a United Nations resolution safeguards the Palestinian nation. National Assembly Speaker hails His Highness the Emir's efforts in the extraordinary summit meeting of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation in Turkey. And Kuwait's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York pushes for a constructive dialogue over the Palestinian humanitarian issue. In local news, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah arrived in the country overnight after heading the State of Kuwait's delegation to the extraordinary summit of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation that took place in the Turkish city of Istanbul. His Highness the Emir was welcomed at the airport by His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah, the National Assembly Speaker Marzouk al-Ghanim, and a host of senior state officials. His Highness the Emir was accompanied by several senior officials from the Emiri Diwan and the Foreign Ministry. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah sent a cable to the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in which he expressed a deep gratitude for the generosity and hospitality he and his delegation were accorded during the participation in the 7th Summit meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation hosted by the Republic of Turkey. His Highness commended the invitation to the summit to discuss the grave developments witnessed by the Palestinian cause in the face of the increasing Israeli violations against the Palestinian people's legitimate right. His Highness also lauded the conduct and perception of the summit, which has had a great impact on its success and important results that will contribute to serve the just causes of the Islamic nations. At the end, His Highness wished His Excellency President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the President of the Republic of Turkey, and the Turkish people more progress, development, and prosperity. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah affirmed in a speech delivered in the Extraordinary Summit of the the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation that concluded in the Turkish capital Istanbul yesterday that the State of Kuwait will continue its efforts to reach a United Nations Security Council resolution that provides international protection to the Palestinian people. His Highness the Emir also stressed that the United States' decision to open a United States embassy in Jerusalem constitutes a flagrant violation of the UN Security Council resolutions and curtailment of the peace process in the Middle East. Still in local news, where His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah, as well as members of the Al-Sabah family, received at the Diwan of Al-Sabah family at the Bayan Palace yesterday evening well-wishers of the advent of the holy month of Ramadan from senior state officials of the Supreme Judicial Council and senior commanders of the officials in the Army, the Police, the National Guard, and the General Directorate of the Fire Brigade and the Diplomatic Corps. Continuing with local news, where the National Assembly Speaker Marzouk al-Ghanim said that commenting on the speech of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Jabr al-Sabah at the extraordinary conference of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Istanbul, that His Highness's speech represents a proof and a guide to the provision and of the Parliament as well as the public. Al-Ghanim said that the speech of His Highness the Emir expressed despair and frustration that came as a result of the continuous violence towards the Palestinian people in the absence of the international legitimacy, considering the American administration's decision to transfer its embassy to Jerusalem came as a result of a failure to implement the principles of international law and unilateral decisions regarding the Palestinian issue. Al-Ghanim said that His Highness the Emir reviewed the Kuwaiti efforts in the Security Council and his attempt to issue a statement or a UN resolution concerning the protection of the Palestinian people and condemning the practices of the occupation. He also stressed the importance of the Security Council meeting its responsibilities with regard to the Palestinian people to deliver international agreement on the provision of the international protection a clear, unequivocal national, Islamic and humanitarian speech regarding the just rights of the Palestinian people. Concluding the 7th extraordinary session of the Islamic Summit Conference, kings and heads of states and government of the members of states of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, OIC, adopted Palestinian territories. The OIC was urged to dispatch an international fact-finding committee to the occupied Palestinian territories to investigate the recent Israeli massacres against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and to provide international protection to the Palestinians. The Islamic Summit also condemned the illegal inauguration of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem and the criminal actions of the Israeli forces against the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly in the Gaza Strip, where unarmed Palestinian civilians are exercising their legitimate right to peaceful protest against the inhumane and absolutely illegal occupation. Mirroring His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Jabal Sabah's efforts and underlying importance of the Palestinian case in Turkey, Kuwait's permanent representative to the United Nations, this vital humanitarian issue must be reached. The state of Kuwait continues tackling the Palestinian cause, calling for international protection for the Palestinian nation. Al-Ataybi said that the tabling of the draft resolution at the UN Security Council to provide international protection for the Palestinian people is part of the state of Kuwait's effort to push for a constructive dialogue over this vital humanitarian issue. The United Nations Human Rights Council called for an international inquiry into the state of human rights in East Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza, calling out Israel for its killings of protesters in the Strip. The special session of the Human Rights Council was convened after the bloodiest day for Palestinians in years last Monday, when 60 Palestinians were killed by Israeli gunfire during demonstrations that Israel said included attempts to breach its frontier fence. The Council voiced a resolution adopted by the majority calling Israel to lift the siege on the Gaza Strip immediately and completely. The Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip reported that 2 Palestinians who were injured in demonstrations along the Gaza Strip earlier this week died of their wounds. The death of Ma'in Asi and Mohammed Alian brought the death toll of the protesters to 64 this month. The death of dozens of Palestinians has sparked worldwide condemnation of the Israeli violence. In other world news, Iraq's Electoral Commission has announced that politician Muqtada Sadr's Sa'irun alliance as the winner of the country's parliamentary election. For parliamentary seats. Meanwhile, the Conquest Alliance of politician Hadi al-Amiri came in Afghanistan, where as many as 8 people were killed and dozens more wounded by multiple overnight explosions at a sports stadium in the eastern city of Jalalabad. Officials said that the blasts were caused by 2 rockets that killed at least 6 people and wounded 50 others, but there was some uncertainty about the final casualty total. The attack happened as players and hundreds of spectators gathered for a nightmare tournament. In other developments, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is urging the youth of Kashmir to contribute to the development of the northern Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. The Indian Prime Minister's statement came after the inauguration of the hydroelectric power plant in the state. Modi also announced that his government has invested around 40 billion rupees aimed at developing all aspects of Kashmir. In Cuba, 4 people have survived yesterday's crash of a local operated airliner. The Boeing 737 aircraft was headed to the eastern city of Holguin before it crashed in a field shortly after taking off, killing 101 passengers. Cuban aviation authorities said that the reason for the crash remains unknown. Elsewhere, fast-moving lava in the U.S. state of Hawaii has isolated around 40 homes in a rural area below the Kauai volcano, forcing a number of evacuations. Hawaii's County Civil Defense said that firefighters and troops are currently securing the area at risk. On Thursday, a Big Island volcano had an explosive eruption at its peak, sending ashes and rocks thousands of feet into the sky, forcing citizens to be evacuated. In other news, Prince Harry and his actress bride Meghan Markle are married today in a ceremony that blended the ancient English ritual with African American culture. In a medieval chapel of Windsor Castle that 39 English kings and queens have called home since 1066, Harry and Meghan exchanged vows watched up close by royals and celebrities and from afar by an audience of many millions. The union of 33-year-old Harry, 6th in line to the British throne, and 36-year-old Meghan, a divorcee whose mother is African American and father is white, was the first of its kind in the history of the royal family. Taking a look at financial news, the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation has said that the price of the Kuwaiti oil went up 6 cents to reach $75.12 per barrel. In the international market, the Brent blend went down by 79 cents to hit $78.51, while the West Texas Intermediate lost 21 cents to settle at $71.28. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said that she would address the trade issues such as reciprocal market access and intellectual property protections during her visit to China next week. Merkel's two-day visit will include talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang. In other business news, Bank of Finland Governor Riikki Liikanen declined today to roll out his candidacy for the job of the head of the European Central Bank. Liikanen, a moderately hawkish member of the ECB, has been seen as a potential compromise candidate to succeed Italian Mario Draghi, who in his term ends in 2019. The search for a replacement for Draghi is seen as pitting the CSP's hawkish northern members against southern European countries viewed as more dovish on policy. In sport news, Chelsea match against Manchester United in the FA Cup final is underway, with Chelsea leading 1-0 at halftime. Real Madrid manager Zinedine Zidane said that forward Cristiano Ronaldo will be fit for the Championship League final against Liverpool in a week's time. And in tennis, Spain's Rafael Nadal beats Serbia's Novak Djokovic 7-6, 6-3 in the semifinals of the Italian Open in Rome today. And finally, checking the weather forecast here in Kuwait, where fair weather will continue throughout the night with light to moderate variable wind with a speed of 8 to 30 kilometers per hour, and some high clouds will appear. And for tomorrow during daytime, hot weather is expected with light to moderate wind with a speed of 6 to 30 kilometers per hour, and some high clouds will appear. Maximum temperature expected tomorrow is 41 degrees Celsius, minimum expected tonight around 31, and the temperature in Kuwait City right now is 30 degrees Celsius. That's all the news for now. Thank you very much for joining us. Join us again at 11:50 p.m. for more news and weather updates.
Take out my chin and grin and say
man have strength, but that is nonsense. She want a man to let her recompense too. She want pay life bill and rent, and you know you have to have a thick dividend, and down the line your pocket have to have length, and make sure say that the dollars have be full of strength. I go chubby, I go chubby, she not love us honey. What she want is money.
Twice my age.
Come now.
Twice my age.
Yeah.
Twice my age.
Come now.
Twice my age. I'm in love with a man nearly twice my age. Don't know what it is, but it's a for my youthful days. As I go my way, I don't care what people say. I'm in love with a man nearly twice my age. Girls, this is my advice to you. A man that age has good experience. He'll treat you good, he'll treat you well. He may make you rich and proud, so you won't have to bow. Won't have to bow.
Young man have strength, but that is nonsense. She want a man to let her recompense too. She want pay life bill and rent, and make sure say that your pocket it have length, and your collaterals a bit full of a strength. I go chubby, I go chubby, she not love us honey. What she want is money, she not love us honey. What she want is money.
Twice my age.
Come now.
Twice my age.
Yeah.
Twice my age.
Come now.
Twice my age. I'm in love with a man nearly twice my age. Don't know what it is, but it's a for my youthful days. As I go my way, I don't care what people say. I'm in love with a man nearly twice my age.
What this girl thinking? She want a elderly man. I don't run her still, because she's thinking about the dollar bill. Yeah.
Right side one, the right side one, cause cars on our side. Got to be done, it's a pity man life.
The right side one,
cause
cars on our side. They had to be done. It's a pity man life. We cannot allow that treason to be mad. We must show them now. We don't need to lie. We haven't a doubt that we are in the right. If you don't look out, or you suffer their right. The heroes return, and the royalty attend, while the angels learn that the pain never ends. The pain never ends. The pain never ends. The pain never As the story goes, the enemy are cool, the OT is over there. Let's see the OT impose their The OT impose their The time soon comes when the crisis is low, and the media soon comes and opposes The heroes return and the riots here attend, while the angel learn that the pain never in the city angel learn. That the pain never in the city angel learn. That the pain never never end. The heroes return and a riot see a 10 while the engine learns. Like a pain never in the city engine learn. Pain never in the city engine learn. The pain never in the city engine learn.
The hands of the clock spin forward, and time never stops. History is a record of our experiences.
If we had taken common measures for our safety, this renewal of the flesh, we'd never have fallen from it.
And it always rhymes.
I have a dream.
Join us as we take a trip back in time.
Let us go forth to lead the land we love.
To reveal the events.
This salt comes from the Indian Ocean. Let every Indian claim it as his right.
Visit the places.
Are citizens of Berlin, and therefore, as a free man.
And meet the people who made the world what it is today.
He knew that you didn't turn out an aggressor, then you could have simply terrible consequences for future generations.
As we discover how we can plan and build a better future.
For the sake of our principles, for the sake of the Kuwaiti people, we stood our ground because the world would not look the other way. Ambassador El Saba, tonight, Kuwait is free.
This Day in History, presented by Ahmed Al-Aslawi. Edited by Salwa Al-Asrousi and Ibtisam Al-Ibrahim. Audio edited by Muhammad Al-Mallah. This Day in History, directed by Salman Al-Zaidi.
Today is May 19th.
Local historical events.
In the year 1952, the late Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah issued a decree stipulating establishment of the National Bank of Kuwait with a capital of 1 million Kuwaiti dinars. Assets of the bank, the first national bank to be established in Kuwait and the Arab region, had reached some $13 billion. In the year 1971, the first issue of the weekly Kuwaiti magazine Mir'at al-Ummah hit newsstands. The magazine, which covered cultural and political issues, was issued with Ali Yusuf al-Rumi as chief editor. In the year 2000, Kuwait made a record achievement at the General Assembly of International Theatre Institute held in the French city of Marseille, when the director Fouad Shatti was chosen to occupy a seat in the ITI Supreme Council. In the year 2008, Kuwait's National Committee for the Protection of the Ozone Layer was awarded the 2008 award in this field by the U.S. Environment Protection Agency at a ceremony in Washington.
International historical events.
In the year 1756, the island of Minorca, one of the Balearic Islands located in the Mediterranean Sea and under British possession since 1708, fell to the French. In the year 1857, William Francis Channing and Moses Farmer were granted the first patent for an electric fire alarm system. In the year 1921, the United States Congress passed the Emergency Quota Act, establishing national quotas on immigration. In the year 1950, Egypt announced that the Suez Canal is closed to Israeli ships and commerce. In the year 1958, the United States and Canada formally established the North American Air Defense Command. In the year 1961, the Nerera 1 became the first man-made object to fly by another planet by passing Venus. The probe had lost contact with Earth a month earlier and did not send back any data. In the year 1964, the State Department announced the U.S. Embassy in Moscow had been bugged. A network of more than 40 microphones embedded in the walls had been found. In the year 1991, Croatians vote for independence in a referendum. In the year 1994, the US FDA approved of the first genetically engineered tomato. Flavor Saver tomatoes were made available in supermarkets. In the year 1995, the world's youngest doctor, Balamari Ambati, at 17 years of age, graduated Mount Sinai. In the year 1996, a large asteroid approaches Earth from 279,000 miles, a distance just greater than the Moon. In the year 2000, China and the European Union reached a market-opening trade deal, clearing Beijing's largest remaining hurdle to joining the World Trade Organization. In the year 2002, Vietnam claimed almost 100% turnout in the mandatory single-party national elections. All 759 candidates were approved by the Fatherland Front. In the year 2004, Britain opened the world's first stem cell bank. In the year 2006, world leaders urged the British administration to close its prison in Guantanamo Bay, saying the indefinite detention of terror suspects there violated the world's ban on torture. In the year 2011, Japan's economy officially entered a recession, partially due to financial strain caused by the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. In the year 2013, a rare 19th century torpedo was discovered off the coast of California by the US Navy Dolphins. In the year 2015, the Refugio oil spill deposited 142,000 US gallons of crude oil onto an area in California, considered one of the most biologically diverse coastlines of the West Coast. In the year 2015, in Portugal, the Metropolitano de Lisboa shut down for 24 hours as staff kept up their fight to stop the government granting private companies concessions to operate services. In the year 2016, NATO invited the Balkan nation of Montenegro to become its 29th member, agreeing to expand for only the 7th time in its history. In the year 2017, Italy's government declared a new law making a series of childhood vaccinations a condition of school inscription, in a move triggered by a spike in measles cases.
You were listening to This Day in History. Join us again tomorrow at the same time for another episode of This Day in History.
This Day in History, presented by Ahmed Al-Aslawi. Edited by Salwa Al-Asrousi and Ibtisam Al-Ibrahim. Audio edited by Muhammad Al-Mallah. This Day in History, directed by Salman Al-Zaidi.
To know him is to love him. Just to see him smile makes my life worthwhile. And to know him is to love him. And I do, I really do, and I do.
to him. I'd bring love to him. Oh, everyone says there'll come a day when I'll walk alongside of him, and to know him is to love him, and I do, I really do, you know I do.
This is Radio Kuwait transmitting on 963 kHz on the medium wave for our listeners in the state of Kuwait and the Arabian Gulf area. The local listeners can also receive our transmission on 93.3 MHz on the FM band. As for our listeners in South and Southeast Asia, we are transmitting on 11,970 kHz on 90-meter band on the shortwave.
GCC, Joint Program Production Institution, presents
Human Relations in Islam.
Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran,
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العظيم.
Here is the meaning. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. O mankind, we have created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous of you, and Allah has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. Allah has revealed the truth. Human Relations in Islam. Human relations in general signify the mutual behaviors and manners of individuals living together with the aim of binding them together on sound and solid basis of mutual love, respect, goodness and peacefulness. Through this thinking, we launch the call to all mankind to cooperate together. And for this reason, Islam has laid down the basis, the pillars, the teachings, the injunctions, the law for the service of this goal. This is what we are going to point out and stress in our program, Human Relations in Islam.
Human relations in Islam.
Human Relations in Islam.
Today, we are going to discuss two fundamental principles which are indispensable to fortifying the society, leading to the general welfare, prosperity, and advancement therein.
These two fundamental principles are justice and freedom. In the Arab island, before the advent of Islam, religion, philosophy and learning were at a low. The earth seemed to be dying. There was only an occasional light and a glimmer of light here and there.
Slavery was a kind of trade, and there was no limit to the hardships and indignity to which a slave might be exposed to.
Such was the world witnessed before the advent of Islam and the coming of its messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
With the emergence of Islam, everything began to change for the better, and life itself changed from the darkness of the past to the light of the future, step by step and without turning back. The weak became no longer weak. They lifted up their heads, looking for the future that seemed to them far better than the past and the present.
Before the weak were mocked by their former oppressors, who repeated and imitated what their predecessors had practiced and done.
The religious law of Islam comprises clear and noble principles governing human conduct as revealed by the omniscient Allah to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
These principles affirm that justice and freedom in the conscience of the believers are an integral part of their belief, faith and in their innermost selves.
A Muslim would be a true Muslim if he did consider that the poorest and the most incapacitated of his Muslim brothers must share equal rights with him and amongst themselves, for we are all of God's creatures, and they are part of us. The noblest being of us all is only the best in conduct.
This justice is that makes almsgiving zakat to the needy and the poor, to the orphan and the wayfarer, a religious duty on those who are capable of providing them with it, not as a favour.
Justice and equality were apparent during the first Muslim era, when belief began to prevail and rule over man's heart.
Justice and equality constituted a deep-rooted belief which people accepted willingly and were observed by the most stringent law.
They were a spiritual reality working both overtly and covertly for the establishment of a righteous and stable society.
For this reason, the believer, the Muslims, is entitled to benevolence, help, protection, loyalty, inheritance and counsel by the decrees of faith in the Islamic law.
Justice eradicates communal prejudices and bigotry, and places equality above any other consideration. Muslims are all equal in the sight of Islam. Allah the Almighty says in His holy book, here is the meaning. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Allah does command you to render back your trusts to those to whom they are due, and when ye judge between people, judge ye with justice. Verily, how excellent is the teaching which Allah gives you, for Allah is He who hears and sees all things. Allah has revealed the truth.
Justice plays a very important role in the life of people. It resembles the backbone of human body and its importance to human life.
Allah the Almighty says in His holy book, here is the meaning. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. If thou judge, so judge in equity between them, for Allah loves those who judge in equity. Allah has revealed the truth.
When you weigh, establish the balance with justice. No difference is there between the old and the young, the Muslim, the non-Muslim, and people you may know and others you may not know, the believer, the unbeliever, the infidel, and the faithful, etc.
They all are equal before the eye of justice. Allah the Almighty says in His holy book, here is the meaning. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. O ye who believe, stand out firmly, for Allah as witnesses to fair dealing, and let not the hatred of others to you make you swerve to wrong, and depart from justice. Be just, that is next to piety, and fear Allah, for Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. Allah has revealed the truth. Allah the Almighty also says in His holy book, here is the meaning. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. O ye who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, even as against yourselves, or your parents, or your kin, and whether it be against a rich or a poor, for Allah can best protect both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest you swerve, and if ye distort justice, or decline to do justice, verily, Allah is well acquainted with all that ye do. Allah has revealed the truth.
Islam has made justice the foundation of the entire world order and system, and which is embodied in the following words in the Holy Quran.
Allah the Almighty says in His holy book, here is the meaning. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, the most benignant, Allah, the merciful, has taught the Quran. He created man. He has taught him the elocution. The sun and the moon move by decreed computation, and the shrubs and trees bow themselves, and the heaven He lifted up, and set the measure that you should not transgress and balance. Allah has revealed the truth.
Human relations in Islam.
Human relations in Islam.
Living together on sound and solid basis of mutual love, respect, goodness, and peacefulness. Human relations in Islam.
Human relations in Islam.
Directed by Hussam Adib Hamid.
Stay for just a while. Stay and let me look at you. It's been so long I hardly knew you. Standing in the door. Stay with me a while. I only want to talk to you. We traveled halfway around the world to find ourselves again. September morn. We danced until the night became a brand new day. Two lovers playing scenes from some romantic play. September morning still can make me feel that way. Look at what you've done. Why, you become a grown-up girl. Still can hear you crying in the corner of your room. And look how far we've come, so far from where we used to be, but not so far that we've forgotten how it was before. September morn. Do you remember how we danced that night away? Two lovers playing scenes from some romantic play. September morning still can make me feel that way. September morn. We danced until the night became a brand new day. Two lovers playing scenes from some romantic play. September morning still can make me feel that way. September morning. Some romantic play. September morning still can make me feel that way.
This is an awareness message to avoid and prevent any of the mentioned security and traffic violations which regularly occur and would cause traffic accidents leading to injury or death. Reckless driving. Driving is an art. Please do not drive recklessly. Use of the seatbelt and other safety measures will prevent serious accidents. This message was brought to you with compliments of the Public Relations and Moral Guidance Department and Media Security Department from the Ministry of Interior.
Radio Kuwait, in cooperation with Radio Bahrain, present...
Hello and welcome to Ramadan Kitchen. I'm Emil Sarani, and we'll be presenting you with special Arabic dishes to help prepare your meals during the holy month. This program was compiled by Zaman Al-Wazan and produced by Mohammed Al-Jaber. Khabisa. This is another Bahraini special dish. To prepare khabisa, you will need 3 cups of brown flour, 1½ cups of sugar, 1½ 1 teaspoon of cardamom powder and ½ teaspoon of saffron. The method of preparation. Prepare the syrup by adding sugar to the water. Then add the cardamom and saffron and stir over moderate heat until it boils and cook for 10 minutes. Stir the flour constantly over low heat until it becomes light yellow in color. Then sift and add the ghee and oil to the flour, stirring constantly over low heat for 5 minutes. Gradually add the syrup and stir constantly. Cover and leave over low heat for 5 more minutes. Bon appetit! That was another special Ramadan recipe. I'll be back tomorrow with more ideas, so stay tuned. This program was compiled by Zaman Wazan and produced by Mohammed Al-Jaber.
This was a Radio Bahrain production presented by Radio Kuwait.
Change the world for the good
This is the International English Broadcasting Radio of the State of Kuwait.
As I travel through the earth, I can't help but notice the symphony I hear all around, from the smallest grain of sand to the faraway planets, to the flower putting roots in the ground, every bird in the sky, every rock and every raindrop sings as it falls from the clouds, every ant, every plant, every breeze, and all the seas, they all sing Subhanaka.
The life stories of the mothers of the believers and 16 other Sahabiyat who had been given the good news of the paradise in this world by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are good examples in the lifestyle of the mothers of the believers and women companions, especially for the Muslim woman.
As I travel through the earth, I can't help but notice the symphony I hear all around, from the smallest grain of sand to the faraway planets, to the flower putting roots in the ground, every bird in the sky, every rock and every raindrop sings as it falls from the clouds, every ant, every plant, every breeze, and all the seas, they all sing Subhanaka Rabbi, Subhanak, Subhanaka ma.
We are happy to present Great Women of Islam, prepared by Muhammad Badr Al-Umran, presented by Farah Bishara,
executed by Abdurrahim Hamdi,
directed by Muhammad Badr Al-Umran. Dear listeners, we welcome you in our program.
Dear beloved listeners, all praises are due to Allah, the Almighty, the Lord of all that exists. May Allah's peace and blessing be upon His final Prophet and Messenger, Muhammad, His family, and His companions. We are pleased to present this program, Great Women of Islam, who were given the good news of paradise. We will talk about the life stories of the mothers of the believers and 16 Prophet's women companions. They were those pure and virtuous women of Islam who were honored during the very lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the prediction that they would live forever in paradise in the hereafter. All the mothers of the believers were of very noble character and conduct, and pleased Allah so much that He sent special greeting for Khadija radiyallahu anha. Aisha radiyallahu anha had a brilliant mind and a remarkable memory, and had the distinction of being the source of many ahadith because of her long association with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Her knowledge of the many branches of religion like tafsir, hadith, fiqh, and sharia, her wisdom in interpretation, her mastery of the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. All these qualities made her one of the most remarkable personalities of the time. Female companions were very active in religion as well as politics and business. They were so courageous in the battlefield that their services, like giving medical aid to the soldiers, nursing the wounded on the battlefields, and providing food and water to the wounded and thirsty, can be found in history. They spread the message of Islam, and it is proved by many of the instances that converted many of the disbelievers to Islam. There are many more stories like this that will encourage our Islamic sisters to get more knowledge about such great women. Our dear listeners, now we will discuss the exploits and achievements of the Sahabiyat, women companions. The Sahabiyat, women companions, were the noble women who were the contemporaries of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They were the pure, virtuous crusaders of Islam and were honored during the very lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, with the prediction that they would live forever in paradise in the hereafter. Their achievements and influence are found in every sphere of that momentous period in the history of the world, when the whole of humanity would be transfigured forever. They were as active in religion as in politics, as courageous in war as in the peaceful and persuasive propagation of the teachings of Islam. These noble, selfless women can be found in the battlefields among the foremost ranks of those taking part in jihad. They were to be found in the political arena, in the field of education, in the courts of Islamic jurisprudence, in the interpretation of Sharia, in trade and commerce, in agriculture, in medicine, and in nursing. In short, there was no sphere that did not benefit from their intellect, their wisdom, and their gentle yet firm strength of character. Let's discuss their religious achievements. Among the many services that one can render to Islam is to fight in the battlefield. Few, if any, examples of such zeal, determination, perseverance, and courage can be found in history. When the disbelievers attacked the Muslims during the Battle of Uhud, only a few devoted followers were left to fight with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. At this critical stage, the woman companion Ammara radiyallahu anha shielded him with her body and warded off the enemy with her sword as well as her bows and arrows. When Qaniya got within striking distance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it was she who bore the brunt of his attack. She had a deep wound in her shoulder, yet she continued to attack him with her sword. But he was well protected, and she could not make a dent in his armor. Against Musaylima al-Kadhab, she fought so courageously that she suffered 12 wounds and lost an arm. In the Battle of Ahzab, the Battle of the Trench, the companion Safiya radiyallahu anha displayed brilliant militant strategy in handling the Jewish attack and slew one of the Jews. In the Battle of Hunayn, Salim radiyallahu anha set out to attack the enemy with her sword. In the Battle of Yarmouk, Asma bint Abu Bakr, Abban, Hakim, Khawla, Hind, and the mother of believers Juwaira radiyallahu anhum displayed extraordinary valor. Asma bint Yazid radiyallahu anha killed 9 enemy soldiers. In the year 28 after Hijrah, Haram radiyallahu anha took part in the attack on Cyprus. The mother of the believers, Aisha, Salim, and Salit radiyallahu anhum were among those who were very proficient at nursing the wounded. The Sahabiyat usually accompanied the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam on his military expeditions and took part in battles both on land and at sea. Besides taking an active part in the war, there were many other services that the Sahabiyat performed, like giving medical aid to the soldiers, nursing the wounded on the battlefields, and providing food and water to the wounded and thirsty. This is proof against those who say women in Islam don't play a role in everyday duties. Standing side by side with the soldiers, they would hand them arrows, nursing the wounded, and generally help to keep up the morale of the army. They also helped to carry the martyred and the wounded back to Al-Medina. Atiyah radiyallahu anha took part in 7 battles and fought during the rule of the Caliphs. Umar al-Faruq radiyallahu anhu. The women and even the children helped to bury the dead. They spread the message of the new religion and through example converted many of the disbelievers to Islam. It was Fatima bint Khattab radiyallahu anha who converted her brother Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu. He was to become one of the bravest and most faithful of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It was Salim radiyallahu anha who influenced Abu Talha radiyallahu anhu, and it was Hakim radiyallahu anha who convinced her husband Ikrimah to accept Islam. Sharik Dusiya radiyallahu anha very discreetly worked among the women of the tribe of Quraysh to spread Islam. Another aspect of missionary work is to preserve the religion in its pristine form and protect it from any modifications, impurities, and innovations that may creep in because of cultural or traditional practices already prevalent in society. It is very important work of preserving the purity of Islam was performed by many of the Sahabiyat, most prominent among whom were Aisha radiyallahu anha. In the year 35th after Hijrah, when Khalif Uthman radiyallahu anhu was martyred and there was chaos and confusion over who was next in line of succession, it was she who brought unity into the ranks by influencing the Muslims of Basra, Al-Iraq, and Mecca, leading the prayers and calling the adhan or the call for prayer is another important aspect of religious life. Although women cannot lead men in prayers, they can do so with assemblies of women. Many women contemporaries of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam performed this task as well. Aisha, Salim, Waraqa, and Sada bint Qumama radiyallahu anhum were some of the most prominent among these. In fact, Waraqa radiyallahu anha turned her house into a place of prayer for women. The adhan was given there by a lady mu'adhin for the women's congregation, and Waraqa radiyallahu anha performed the duties of the imam in leading the prayers. Let's talk about their political achievements. The Sahabiyat played a prominent role in politics as well. Khalifa Umar radiyallahu anhu so valued Shifa bint Abdullah radiyallahu anha for her political intelligence and insight that he very often consulted with her. He often gave her the responsibility of running the affairs of state relating to trade and commerce. Before the Hijrah, or the migration of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to Al-Medina, the disbelievers wanted to lay siege to his house. It was Ruqayya bint Safi radiyallahu anha who warned him. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam then secretly left for Al-Madinah, leaving Ali radiyallahu anhu asleep in his place. Vast political rights are granted to women in Islam. A woman even has the right to grant shelter to an enemy if she so wishes. A historian, Abu Dawood, relates that Hani radiyallahu anha, the sister of Ali radiyallahu anhu, had given refuge to an enemy disbeliever, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "If you have guaranteed sanctuary and safety to a person, then we stand by you. It is the law of Islam that the Imam or leader has to stand by the guarantee offered by the woman." Let's move on to education, knowledge, and the fine arts. There are various subjects, an understanding of which are essential for a thorough knowledge of Islam and its tenets. Qira'at, interpretation and commentary, Sharia, fiqh, study of hadith, all are important aspects of Islamic studies. Many of the women companions were experts in these fields. Aisha memorized the Quran, as did Hafsa, Salama, Waraqah radiyallahu anhum, Hind bint Asid, Hisham bint Haritha, Zayda bint Hayyan, Sa'ad bint Sa'ad radiyallahu anhum, all knew portions of the Quran by heart. The latter used to regularly lecture on the Quran. In the sensitive interpretation of hadith, all were experts. But Aisha and Salama radiyallahu anhuma were exceptional masters of interpretation and commentary. With the former, 2,210 ahadith were associated and 378 with the latter. Aisha radiyallahu anha was an expert on interpretation and commentary due to her close association with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Much of the book of tafsir in Sahih Muslim contains narrations from her. Asma bint Abu Bakr, the sister of Aisha, Atiyya, Hani, and Fatima bint Qais radiyallahu anhum also had extensive knowledge of ahadith. In Islamic jurisprudence or fiqh, Aisha radiyallahu anha had verdicts that could fill several volumes. The same could be said of Salama radiyallahu anha. The invaluable verdicts of Safiya, Hafsa, Habiba, Juwayriya, Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, Sharik, Atiyya, Asma bint Abu Bakr, Layla bint Qayf, Khawla, Darda, Athika bint Zayd, Sahla bint Suhayl, Fatima bint Qais, Zainab bint Jahsh, Salama, Ayman, and Yusuf radiyallahu anhum could fill several volumes. Aisha radiyallahu anha was also very well versed in the law of inheritance, and many renowned and respected companions consulted her on the finer points of the law. Besides being masters of Islamic law, and of the finer points of fiqh, the women companions had skill and ability in other branches of knowledge. Asma bint Yazid radiyallahu anha was an expert in making speech. Asma bint Umais radiyallahu anha was famous for her interpretation of dreams. Several companions were noted for their skill in medicine and surgery. Aslamiyya Matta, Kabsha, Amna bint Jahsh, Mu'adha, Umayma, Ziyad, Rabi'a bint Mu'awwadh, Atiyya, and Salim radiyallahu anhum were some of them well known for their skills. Rufayda Aslamiyya radiyallahu anha had a tent set up as a surgery with all the necessary instruments and was situated close to the Prophet's masjid at Medina. The arts were not neglected by any means. Some of the most noted poetesses were Sa'diyya, Safiya, Atiqa bint Zayd, Hind bint Uthatha, Ayman, Kabsha bint Rafi'a, Umama, Murida, Hind bint Harith, Zainab bint Awam, Maymuna, and Ruqayya radiyallahu anhum. A book of verses by Khansa radiyallahu anha, the best known among them, has been published. Now, let's discuss industry, trade, and commerce. The women companions also practiced the practical or survival skills as we know them today. Agriculture, business, trade, and commerce, writing, editing, cottage industries like weaving, manufacture, and designing of clothes. All of these are mentioned in the Musnad, the collection of ahadith of Imam Ahmad. Agriculture was not so common, but was mainly practiced in the rural, fertile areas around Al-Madina, especially by the women of the Ansar. Among the immigrants, or Muhajir, as they were known, Asma also practiced farming. The era before the advent of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was known as the age of illiteracy. But some of these worthy women were highly educated and skilled in the arts of penmanship and calligraphy. Shifa bint Abdullah radiyallahu anha learned to read and write even during these dark ages and was celebrated for her skill at this art. Hafsa, Kulthum bint Uqba, and Karima bint Miqdad radiyallahu anhum were all literate. Aisha and Salama radiyallahu anhuma could not write, but they could read. Both of them were blessed with remarkable memories and inquiring minds, and because of their close association with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, many of the authentic ahadith originated from them. Some of the Sahabiyat also ran businesses. Khadija radiyallahu anha was a very successful businesswoman and used to send trading caravans to different countries. Khawla, Malika, Thaqafiyya, and Bint Bakhriya radiyallahu anhum used to trade in the oriental oil-based perfumes known as Atuq. Sa'da radiyallahu anha operated a leather tanning industry. The daughters of the Ansar would compose verses and poems for festive occasions, according to the hadith narrated by Fari'a bint Mu'adh radiyallahu anha. They recited their poems in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who had appreciated their literary skills. Salama radiyallahu anha used to recite the Quran with tajweed, which was a difficult skill and much appreciated. Thus, there was no sphere of activity, social or cultural, that was not influenced and assisted by the presence of these great ladies. May Allah Jalla Jalaluh have mercy on their souls. Allah will be pleased with them and they with Him.
Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah.
This is for our program today. We hope to meet again in the next episode of Great Women in Islam.
Executed by Abdurrahim Hamdi.
Best regards, Farah Bishara. Director, Muhammad Badr Al-Umar. This is the International English Broadcasting Radio of the State of Kuwait.
I'll do all
dogs with destinations, poetic symmetry, the cause and information in my anatomy. Don't you see? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can send and forget me not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'll still reach up to the top. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Until the last day that I drop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To the left, to the right. Keep it going, it's alright. To the left and to the right. Step it up, it's alright. We won't flex, we won't flex, we won't flex. All you gotta do is bounce it, see just what goes where. There ain't no way around it, so I have come well prepared. Don't you know? I'm in you from the outset. Head to head, pan goes to gone, and we reach our outer limits. Bring the boogie on back home. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can send and forget me not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'll still reach out to the top. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're going right around the clock. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To the left and to the right. Step it up, it's alright. To the left and to the right. Check the new ride out, it's alright. See how we are living, 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 see how we are living. You'll hear me saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can send and forget me not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'll still reach out to the top. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Until the last day that I drop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is something you can't stop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To the left, to the right. Keep it going, it's alright. To the left, to the right. Step it up, it's alright.
It's been said and done. Every beautiful thought's been already sung. And I guess right now here's another one. So your melody will play on and on. With the best of all, you are beautiful. Like a dream come alive, incredible. A centerfold miracle, lyrical. You saved my life again. And I want you to know, baby, I love you like a love song, baby. I love you like a love song, baby. I love you like a love song, baby. And I
Radio Kuwait presents Ramadan Kareem. A special segment that takes us to the traditions and customs in this holy month of Ramadan. Edited by Chaitali. By Muhammad Barakat. This is your host, Rowena Tino, bringing you Ramadan Kareem. Ramadan Kareem. We will introduce you to various aspects of traditional life in Kuwait. In the past, when men would be absent for long periods of time when they went to sea, women would welcome any occasion to celebrate and forget about their responsibilities, even only for a few hours. They would celebrate simple occasions. For example, when a child started to teeth or walk for the first time, they would give a party called a noon, which is usually given in the afternoon. The children of the family, relatives, and neighbors would then be invited. The mother would spread a carpet in the courtyard of the house before going up to the housetop carrying a basket of candies and nuts. She then throws them down to the invitees. The children get the treats and fit them in their clothes. There were other occasions and events that every family celebrated according to their needs. For instance, Dak al-Haris, which means crushed wheat, which was an important aspect of Kuwaiti celebrations. This was made especially during Ramadan. The family bought large amounts of wheat and then invited a group of skilled workers to do the job of crushing it. In the family, relatives and neighbors participated in preparing for the wedding. For example, a rich lady would lend her neighbor some of her jewelry for the occasion. Another neighbor would have provided the new couple with carpets, furnitures, or decorations. Other neighbors helped in cooking or contributed in paying the fees for the musicians. It was a community that shared and lived together. The role of the mosque was very important as it is now. Within any Islamic society, there are certain persons who can recite the Holy Quran, lead Muslims in prayer, deliver sermons at a Friday prayer and religious feast, distribute inheritance, contract marriages, and teach religious duties. Muhammad bin Fairuz, who died in 1722, was a very well-known religious scholar who was originally from Al-Asa. He was the first scholar, judge, preacher, and teacher in Kuwait. He used to pray, preach, and deliver sermons in the Ibn Bahar Mosque, which was built near the coast. The first mosque in Kuwait was built in 1670. state that there were 14 mosques in Kuwait in 1771. In his book, another historian, Adnan al-Bahar, referred to certain mosques in Kuwait, such as Ibn Bahar, Al-Adsani, Al-Khalifa bin Khamis, in addition to 11 other mosques throughout Kuwait. So we know that Kuwait was a God-fearing, religious and spiritual country. Who taught the Quran to the children? It was the job of the Al-Mullah and Al-Mutawa. Compulsory education was taught by a full-time teacher somewhere other than the mosque. In return for low fees, the Al-Mullah or the Al-Mutawa used to teach children the Holy Quran and the basic principles of reading and writing from an early age. Their fees were fixed according to the financial capabilities of the children's parents. Lessons were taught at the house of the Al-Mullah or Al-Mutawa, which was known as a school. It was similar to elementary schools in other countries that taught Quran, as education was basically religious in nature. The Al-Mullah or Mutawa paid special attention to teaching calligraphy, as good handwriting was a prerequisite to getting a good job as a tradesman. And as we know, trade was very important to pre-oil Kuwait. It was also indispensable for diving calculations, the means of distributing the income between sailors and shipmasters, the calculations for plaster use in painting houses, and the calculations of measuring cooking fat that were some of the main goods traded by land by Kuwaiti and Bedouin traders in the surrounding desert. The role of the Al-Mullah in the mosque, where the Quran and Hadith were taught and religious lessons were held, was important in the formation of the Kuwaiti culture. And that's it for our program for today. Join me as we continue to know and learn more about the traditions and culture of this holy month. Tune in again tomorrow for another episode of Ramadan Kareem. Edited by Chaitali Roy and directed by Muhammad Barakat. This is your host, Lorena Tino. Thank you and masalam.
This is Radio Kuwait transmitting on 963 kHz on the medium wave for our listeners in the state of Kuwait and the Arabian Gulf area. The local listeners can also receive our transmission on 93.3 MHz on the FM band. As for our listeners in South and Southeast Asia, we are transmitting on 11,970 kHz on 90-meter band on the shortwave.
Dear parents, make sure you do all the proper maintenance for all the kitchen appliances, especially the gas cylinder, on a regular basis to avoid any cause of fire. This message was brought to you by Public Relations and Media Department from the Kuwait Fire Service Directorate.
Salted rain running from your eyes. I remember deep into the night. I remember your scent when I just woke up and I'm on your chest. I remember the sound of your heart racing when you do bad things to me. I wanna feel like it's the first night. I wanna meet you for the first time. I remember your smile when you face it up and it felt so right. A coincidence or a trap, special moment or a slap. Funny love will attack as it gets bigger behind your back. I've been trying, oh, dancing away the dead gone days. I've been flying, oh, the moment that I see your face. I remember goodbye. And so did rain running from your eyes. I remember the fights burning deep into the night. I remember your scent when I just woke up and I'm on your chest. I remember the sound of your heart racing when you do bad things to me. I wanna feel like it's the first night. I wanna meet you for the first time. I remember your smile when you face it up and it felt so right.
This is an awareness message to avoid and prevent any of the mentioned security and traffic violations which regularly occur and would cause traffic accidents leading to injury or death. Motorbikes. Using motorbikes requires many safety measures. Make sure to use helmets and safe tires. Follow the speed limits and do not drive between cars or drive recklessly. This message was brought to you with compliments of the Public Relations and Moral Guidance Department and Media Security Department from the Ministry of Interior.
Laura and Tommy were lovers. He wanted to give her everything. Flowers, presents, and most of all, a wedding ring. He saw a sign for a stock car race, $1,000 prize it raised. He couldn't get Laura on the phone, so to her mother, Tommy said, tell Laura I love her. Tell Laura I need her. Tell Laura I may be late. I've something to do that cannot wait. He drove his car to the racing ground. He was the youngest driver there, and the crowd roared as they started a race. Round the track they drove at a deadly pace. No one knows what happened that day, how his car overturned in flames. But as they pulled him from the twisted wreck, with his dying breath, they heard him say, tell Laura I love her. Tell Laura I need her. Tell Laura not to cry. My love for her will never die. And in the chapel where Laura prayed for Tommy who passed away, it was just for Laura he lived and died. Alone in the chapel she could hear him cry, tell Laura I love her. Tell Laura I need her. Tell Laura not to cry. My love for her will never die. Tell Laura I love her. Tell Laura I love her.
Walking in the sand, walking hand in hand. The night was so exciting, the smile was so inviting. When he touched my cheek, with his fingertips, softly, softly with me.
Each morning when he goes downtown, where everyone's his boss and he's lost in an angry land. He's a little man, but then he comes uptown each evening to my tenement, uptown where folks don't have to pay much rent, and when he's there
dance on the floor and round. People always told me, be careful what you do. Don't go around breaking young girls' hearts. And mother always told me, be careful who you love. Be careful what you do. Do the lie become the truth. Hey, the Jesus, like my love. She just a girl. I am the one. But the Jesus, like my son. She says I am the one. But the Jesus, like my son. Before the days and before the night, I was on the side. Who can stand when he's in demand? Her schemes and plans. Go and dance on the floor and round. So take my strong advice. Just remember to always think twice. Don't think twice. She told my baby dance to 3. She looked at me and showed a photo. Baby cried, his eyes were like mine. Go and dance on the floor and around. Be careful what you do. Go around breaking young girls' hearts. Don't sit right by me, 'cause I smell the sweet perfume. I guess soon she called me to her room. Hey, the Jesus, like my love. She just a girl. Claims that I am the one. But the Jesus, like my son. She just a girl. I am the one. But the Jesus, like my son. She says I am the one. But the Jesus, like my son. She just a girl, claims that I am the one. Baby, Jesus, like my son. She says I am the one. Jesus, like my son. She says I am the one. You know she did. She says Jesus, breaking my heart, babe. She says I am.
won't forget.
This is Radio Kuwait. The local time is 11:50 p.m. A very good evening and welcome to the news in brief. I am Mazal Ansari. The United Nations Human Rights Council called for an international inquiry into the state of human rights in East Jerusalem, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, calling out Israel for its killings of protesters in the Strip. The special session of the Human Rights Council was convened after more than 60 Palestinians on the Gaza Strip immediately and the Ministry of Health in the Gaza Palestinians this week have died of their wounds on Saturday. The deaths of Maureen Asi and Mohammed Alian brought the death toll of the protesters to 64 this month. The death of dozens of Palestinians has sparked worldwide condemnation of the Israeli violence. Iraq's Electoral Commission has announced politician Muqtada al-Sadr's Sairun alliance as the winner of the country's elections. The commission said that the alliance, which contested Iraq's elections for the first time, has won 54 parliamentary seats. Meanwhile, the Congress alliance of political Hadi al-Amiri came in second with 47 seats, and the Victory Alliance, headed by incumbent Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, came third with 2 seats. More than 100 people were killed when a Boeing 737 crashed soon after taking off from Havana in what appeared to be Cuba's worst air disaster in nearly 30 years. The officials said that 3 people out of the 105 passengers and crew members on board survived the crash. Cuban aviation authorities said the reason for the crash remains unknown. Prince Harry and his actress bride, Meghan Markle, married on Saturday in a ceremony that blended ancient English ritual with African American culture. In a medieval chapel at Windsor Castle, Harry and Meghan exchanged vows, watched up close by royals and celebrities, and from afar by a global television audience of many millions. The union of 33-year-old Harry, sixth in line to the British throne, and 36-year-old Meghan, a divorcee whose mother is African American and father is white, was the first of its kind in the history of the royal family. In business news, the Bank of Finland Governor Erkki Liikanen declined on Saturday to rule out his candidacy for the job of head of the European Central Bank ECB. Liikanen, a moderately hawkish member of ECB, has been seen as a potential compromise candidate to succeed Italian Mario Draghi when his term ends in 2019. The search for a replacement for Draghi is seen as pitting the ECB's hawkish northern members against southern European countries, viewed as more dovish on policy. In sports news, in football, Chelsea won the FA Cup final on Saturday after defeating Manchester United 1-0. Manchester United boss Jose Mourinho felt that Chelsea did not deserve to win the FA Cup, accusing them of defending with 9 players in Saturday's final at Wembley. Chelsea won the competition for the 8th time after Eden Hazard's first half penalty gave the Blues a 1-0 victory. The 40-year-old goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon ended his 17-year Juventus career as his team was crowned a 7th straight Italian title with a 2-win win over Verona on Saturday. And in tennis news, Spain's Rafael Nadal beat Serbia's Novak Djokovic in 2 sets, 7-6 and 6-3, in the semifinals of the Italian Open in Rome on Saturday. And finally, the local weather forecast for Sunday. calls for relatively hot temperatures by day, with light to moderate variable winds prevailing, with speeds of 6 to 30 kilometers per hour, and with scattered high-altitude clouds appearing throughout the day on Sunday. The maximum temperature expected on Sunday is 41 degrees Celsius. The minimum expected is 23, while it is currently 30 degrees Celsius in Kuwait City. That's all the news this hour. Mazal Ansari, Radio Kuwait.
That is all I'm taking with me. So goodbye. Please don't cry. We both know I'm not what you need. Treat you kind, and I hope you have all you dreamed of, and I wish you joy and happiness, but above all this I wish you love.
This is Radio Kuwait. It is now almost midnight in the state of Kuwait. That's 2100 hours GMT. And it is now time to close down our English language transmission. We shall be resuming our transmission tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Kuwait local time. That's all 5 hours GMT. On 963 kHz on the medium wave for our listeners in the state of Kuwait and the Arabian Gulf area. At the same time, we shall also be resuming our transmission on 93.3 MHz on the FM band for our local listeners. As for our listeners in Europe and North America, we shall meet tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Kuwait local time, that's 1800 hours GMT, on 540 kHz on the 25-meter band on the shortwave.
منتصف الليل في الكويت.